February 14th, 1996. Valentine's Day in Nashville, Tennessee. A day that should have been filled with love and celebration. Instead, it became a nightmare that would haunt the city for years to come. Two beautiful young women, both just 18 years old, both with their whole lives ahead of them. Melissa Chilton and Tiffany Campbell. Their names would soon be etched into the dark history of Music City. But before we dive deeper into this haunting case, take a moment to subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us continue sharing these important stories, ensuring that victims like Melissa and Tiffany are never forgotten. The morning started like any other at Exotic Tan, a tanning salon nestled in a strip mall on Church Street. The establishment offered more than just tanning services. It was an adult entertainment business operating under the guise of a legitimate salon, a detail that would prove crucial to this investigation. At 2:45 p.m., the owner of Exotic Tan made a routine check of the premises. What he discovered would forever change the lives of two families and send shockwaves through the Nashville community. The bodies of Melissa Chilton and Tiffany Campbell lay brutally murdered. The scene was described by veteran detectives as one of the most violent they had ever encountered. Both young women had been stabbed multiple times, their lives cruelly taken in a savage attack that spoke of intense rage. If you're finding value in this investigation, please hit that like button. It helps more people discover these stories and keeps the memory of victims alive. Melissa Chilton was a vibrant young woman who had recently graduated from Ezell Harding Christian School. Those who knew her described her as friendly and outgoing, with a smile that could light up any room. She had dreams and aspirations, all cut tragically short on that February afternoon. Tiffany Campbell was equally full of life. Friends remembered her as someone who could always make others laugh, who lived life on her own terms. She had recently moved to Nashville from Kentucky, seeking new opportunities in the city of dreams. Neither young woman had been working at Exotic Tan for long. They were temporary employees, trying to make ends meet like so many others their age. They had no way of knowing that their workplace would become the scene of their brutal murders. The initial investigation revealed no signs of forced entry, suggesting the killer might have been someone familiar with the establishment. The violence of the attacks pointed to a crime of passion, but who would harbor such rage against these young women? As detectives began their investigation, they found themselves facing a web of complications. The nature of the business meant that many potential witnesses were reluctant to come forward. The stigma associated with adult entertainment created a wall of silence that would prove challenging to break through. If you're invested in learning how this case unfolds, make sure to subscribe. Part 2 of this investigation reveals the extraordinary twists and turns that led police down a path they never expected. The Nashville Police Department assigned their best detectives to the case. They knew they were dealing with a particularly dangerous individual, someone who had committed a double homicide in broad daylight in a commercial area. The brazenness of the crimes suggested either careful planning or a complete disregard for consequences. Evidence at the scene was processed meticulously. Blood spatter analysis, fingerprints, and every possible piece of physical evidence was collected. But in 1996, DNA technology wasn't as advanced as it is today. The investigators would have to rely heavily on traditional police work to crack this case. As Valentine's Day drew to a close, two families began the unimaginable process of grieving their murdered daughters. The city of Nashville held its breath, wondering if a killer walked among them. And in the shadows, that very killer watched as the investigation began to unfold. As dawn broke on February 15th, 1996, Nashville detectives were already knee-deep in what would become one of the city's most challenging investigations. The brutal Valentine's Day murders at Exotic Tan had left the community on edge, and pressure was mounting to find the killer. If you're just joining us on this investigation, take a moment to subscribe. These cases remind us why justice, even delayed, matters so much. The first breakthrough came when investigators discovered that Tiffany Campbell had been dating someone significant, Patrick Streater, a former high school football star at Ezell Harding Christian School, the same school Melissa Chilton had attended. This connection couldn't be ignored. But things weren't that simple. At the time of the murders, Streater was a senior at Murray State University in Kentucky, playing football on a scholarship. He had what appeared to be a solid alibi. He was supposed to be on campus, over 200 miles away from Nashville. The investigation took an interesting turn when detectives learned about the complex nature of Campbell and Streeter's relationship. They had dated on and off, and there were reports of tension between them. Yet proving his presence in Nashville on the day of the murders proved challenging. The crime scene itself provided both help and frustration. While there was abundant physical evidence, including blood and potential DNA, the technology of 1996 had limitations. The killer had been careful not to leave obvious fingerprints, and surveillance technology wasn't what it is today. For those of you following this case closely, hit that like button. Your engagement helps us share these important stories with a wider audience. Months turned into years. The families of Melissa Chilton and Tiffany Campbell watched as leads went cold and hope began to fade. But behind the scenes, detectives never stopped working. They knew that advances in forensic science might one day provide the breakthrough they needed. The case remained active, but stagnant until 2009, when the Nashville Cold Case Unit decided to take a fresh look. By then, DNA technology had advanced significantly. Evidence that had been carefully preserved from the crime scene could now tell a more complete story. Detective Pat Postiglione, known for his tenacity in cold cases, took special interest in the murders. He believed that the violent nature of the crime suggested personal motivation. This wasn't a random act of violence or a robbery gone wrong. The cold case unit's persistence would eventually pay off, but not before several more years of painstaking investigation. They re-interviewed witnesses, some of whom were now more willing to speak about events from years ago. They re-examined every piece of evidence with new technology and fresh eyes. If you're intrigued by how modern forensic science helps solve cold cases, subscribe now. In Part 3, we'll reveal how breakthrough DNA evidence finally helped crack this case wide open. The investigation revealed something crucial about the killer's methodology. The perpetrator had known the layout of Exotic Tan, understood its operations, and had chosen a time when the business would be relatively quiet. This wasn't an opportunistic crime. It showed planning and familiarity with the location. As 2011 approached, investigators finally had what they believed was enough evidence to move forward. Years of scientific advancement had allowed them to analyze DNA evidence in ways that weren't possible in 1996. The path to justice, though long delayed, was about to take a dramatic turn. March 2013, 17 years after the brutal Valentine's Day murders, the Nashville Police Department made a stunning announcement. They had indicted Patrick Streater for the murders of Melissa Chilton and Tiffany Campbell. Before we reveal how this breakthrough happened, if you haven't already subscribed, now's the perfect moment. These cold cases show us that justice never truly expires. The case against Streater had been building slowly, but surely. DNA evidence, re-examined with modern technology, played a crucial role. But it wasn't just the scientific evidence. Investigators had pieced together a compelling timeline that challenged Streeter's original alibi. The arrest came while Streater was already serving time in a California prison for unrelated crimes. The charges were serious, 2 counts of first-degree murder. Each charge carried the possibility of life in prison. But the path to justice would prove to be anything but straight. The case faced numerous delays and legal challenges. Streeter's defense team questioned the reliability of evidence collected so many years ago, and procedural issues further complicated the prosecution. If you're finding this case as compelling as we do, please hit that like button. It helps us continue bringing attention to important cold cases like this one. In 2015, Streater was finally extradited to Tennessee to face charges. The families of Melissa and Tiffany watched as the man accused of taking their daughters' lives was brought back to Nashville. It had been nearly 2 decades since that tragic Valentine's Day. However, the case would face more hurdles. Legal proceedings dragged on for years, with multiple delays and complications. The COVID-19 pandemic in 2020 further impacted the judicial process, adding more waiting time for the victims' families. As of 2024, the case continues to move through the legal system. Patrick Streater maintains his innocence, and the families of Melissa Chilton and Tiffany Campbell continue their long wait for closure. The charges remain active, demonstrating the complexity of prosecuting cold cases, even with advanced DNA evidence. This case serves as a powerful reminder that cold cases are never truly cold as long as someone remembers. The dedication of the Nashville Cold Case Unit, the advances in forensic science, and the unwavering determination of two families seeking justice all played crucial roles in keeping this investigation alive. For Melissa Chilton and Tiffany Campbell, two young women whose lives were brutally cut short, the quest for justice continues. Their story reminds us that behind every cold case are real people, real families, and real pain that doesn't diminish with time. The investigation of the exotic tan murders stands as a testament to the evolution of forensic science and the persistence of law enforcement. While the final chapter of this story remains unwritten, it proves that no matter how much time passes, the truth has a way of emerging. Their cases remind us that every victim deserves justice, no matter how long it takes. And as we conclude this investigation, we honor the memories of Melissa and Tiffany, two young women who should never be forgotten.